onto
Hi, Audrey. Hi, everyone. We'll just give it a second. I think Riley said she had a question, so we'll see if she joins. We'll take that one and any others before we start. Besides that, how was everyone's week, or were there any other questions or comments from the group? Ah, she says she's in the waiting room. That's weird. There isn't a waiting room. Okay, hang on. Okay, yeah. All right, so Riley's here. Yes, there's a comment from Jorge.
Uh,
What?
well, actually, okay. So if I say from Jorge, actually, no. Everyone has a twin soul according to what Master Lakshmi said, but not everyone has to do so. Like, and this is like from what I understanding is I think it's that the journey is well beyond like whatever construct that we're in, so it has nothing to necessarily do with where we're at, like to do the work here. What he said though is because this Master Lakshmi wasn't on a twin flame journey, but he was aware that he had a twin soul. So what he answered in the question was that he was like, to some extent your twin does have to be in like in gnosis, like in the work. They have to be on the path, but you don't need to work with that person. That's not your necessarily the alchemical partner. If you're in a karmic work, so you've been working over many lives, you have to work with the partner that you've been working. So how like Master Samuel was like, oh, I know I've been working with Atlantes over many lifetimes, or Master Lakshmi had partners he was working with over many lifetimes. So to some extent, that's who you will probably need to do the work with, the completely great work at that level. But I'm not sure in the sense of a cosmic marriage, which when Master Samael talked about, because Master Lakshmi wasn't talking about that, but where you came in already joined and then split on some type of mission, and it also probably goes along with that aspect. Also goes along with like soul families as well, because in when they have like investigations now we're talking about New Age, so it's a little bit off gnosis, but most twin flames subjectively are in mission groups and like the whole alien thing, but like that it's not even just a group of two, it's like a group of multiple spirits that came into the construct. At least that's like what when they've done like hypnosis on certain people that have had that trait. um it's more than like two. It's those are the two that split are the exact same vibration, but they have a group that all of them are of a similar frequency and they're sharing some type of higher unfoldment that's outside of the solar system and then came in together to do a mission at this time. Um, which, and subjectively they say they're aliens, but, something along those lines. So there's some type of joined spirit unfoldment from outside of the solar system. And then you may come in, I guess, as a duad and then split. But, yeah. Riley says, "My question was, what if your twin flame, who is degenerate, starts to attack you and uses others to attack you?" So, back to what I was saying before, in the sense of if the partner is attacking us, like actually doing negativity towards us, then more than likely it's a karmic soulmate than a twin flame because of the fact that if there's like abuse going on, then it's probably over, like I said, from some type of karma. Perhaps in a past life, we were the ones that harmed the other person. So then they're here to give us the karma back. but also in the sense that there's a lesson to be learned too. Even if it wasn't like we did something to them, maybe we just signed up to have a certain karmic relationship. But with a karmic relationship, it will keep occurring until we learn the lesson. Um, but it's probably not a twin flame journey. Basically, we have to learn to let it go. And in that sense, then the karma will be paid. We'll have to keep suffering through the karma until the karma is paid. And the karma, in the sense of a karmic relationship, is usually the lesson must be learned because of the fact it's usually attached to something that we did negatively in a past existence.
Was that Riley's question?
Hmm.
Okay, great. There's a comment from Jorge. This also seems different than the being potentially splitting itself into different incarnations. Yes. For example, Master Samael's prior incarnation was still alive while his last body came into the world.
Yeah, it is. It is different. That would probably be more along the lines of a soul grouping. Of course, at Master Samael's level, we're talking about his Atman, but I guess when we're saying like a soul family, they're saying it would be a higher unfoldment. So beyond doing something similar to this, though, right? So how the being, even our Atman, can have 3 or 4 incarnations. Say an unfoldment higher. Let's say I don't know, like Hakma or something, right? Maybe you could have even more incarnations than that because it's coming from an even higher point. But the grouping shares a common unfoldment that's lower than the absolute, because actually at the highest level, we're all one. But a soul family or whatever is just that somewhere along the lines you share a more common unfoldment. And in the case of what we're talking about, these twin flames or mission groups, we're speaking about one that is beyond the Atman, because the Atman is still within this manifestation. But it's the same concept, right? That these higher beings, depending on their grade, can incarnate into multiple people more frequently. I think with Master Samael, since he's a planet, right? So that's still pretty low grade, but he had at least, what was it, 3 incarnations? I don't know. You remember that? I think it was 3. I think Master Samael said he was aware of
Simultaneous.
simultaneously. Then the other ones weren't awake because they don't all even need to be awake for the mission. And maybe only one that's awake, and the other ones do certain things that the being needs so that there's like information drawn in or something.
Mm. Yeah, it's all very interesting, and because technically it means you could be friends with or even marry your other incarnations. Yes.
If that's the mission, you know.
Yes, that's right.
Mm.
Okay, so were there any other questions or comments or things from the week, things that you've been learning, reflecting on, or maybe you have had things coming up? Generally, people might have lots of interesting dreams during Capricorn.
Oh yeah, that's right. During this period, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff coming up. Even not just dreams, just egos.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyone? That's any question?
Yeah, Nathaniel.
Yes, the Capricorn meditation. I went into my body and followed you guys on your lead, and the fusal bones between my sacrum and coccyx just started reverberating, just boom, 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 boom. I was trying to differentiate between, is that trauma that needs released, or is that an awakening that needs to be channeled eventually? Like, how do I, because it wasn't painful. It was just boom, 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 boom.
Sometimes that can be the presence of the being in energetic form, and you can start raising it up the spine.
Okay, because somebody was telling me that's not a gnosis, so I had to like take it with a grain of salt. But they're like, it's the Kundalini. You need to be careful. And I was like, noted. I'll be careful.
Well, I mean, it definitely is related to the energy. Permanently raising the Kundalini usually comes through alchemy, but we can feel the energy, just through transmutation. A lot of the times when we feel the energy in a certain place, especially since we're talking, you said around the root and the sacral, it could just be
Yeah.
like, if it wasn't really that painful, it could just be like it's like a partial blockage or something. So you're still feeling the energy coming through because it feels less intense once it like finally like breaks through and it's like constantly moving through it like clearly.
Yeah.
But like when it's
It
first
feels like
starting to, or maybe it like just broke through, for example, maybe you just broke a blockage because you said there's no pain. Usually there is a little bit of pain when we have like some type of blockage, but maybe it's like the first time it broke through something or something of that nature, and then yeah, you'll feel the energy, and then eventually it'll like kind of subside. Not that it stops moving, you'll know that it's still moving, but it won't feel so intense because it becomes your new normal. Eventually, once the energy is like moving all the way through, we know the energy is moving, but it doesn't have that like profound energetic feeling
Mm.
as much anymore because it becomes your new standard. But that's those are good things, and that's definitely you should feel energy in the spine. Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not something to be scared of. I think the people that are scared of awakening the Kundalini probably are awakening it in a negative way, which could lead to psychological things. Um, but that's because they have ego, right? So if we give
Right.
energy to the ego, then the ego can make us flip out. But if we're doing work on the ego, there's no harm in working with the energy.
Exactly. Because I'm sitting there like I have no
Hmm.
cause to want to use it negatively. So what are you talking about? Be scared of it anyway.
Uh,
But okay, I'll sit with the void some more.
yeah.
There's a comment from Sarah. She says, I recently had a dream about my parents. I have never had any dreams about anything like that before. It's been a bit difficult to understand and digest. Hmm. Sometimes the parents can be the Divine Mother and Divine Father in a dream. So, depending on the interaction, there could be a message in that how you felt or what they were telling you. Like, some common ones are they're telling you to clean your room, that's to clean up your psychology, or they're saying, why did you go away from me? That means maybe you haven't been listening. Or they could even be saying, oh, you're coming closer, like let's eat together, have a meal together. Maybe they're giving you some dispensation. So all of the interactions will tell you the meaning of the message, but generally that's what parents are in a dream.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Also, it's important like Ruth said, to observe our feelings and dreams because the astral plane is the emotional plane. So sometimes it's more important what we're feeling rather than
Hmm.
okay, so I felt a bit toxic music. It could be trauma too. I mean, if you have trauma with your parents, it's not like it has to be
Yeah,
the being or the
you
divine
have to
mother.
you
You
have
have
to
to,
feel what
yeah.
it is.
But all of that, yeah. If there's like some pain or trauma, maybe that's something to observe, and then it's related to an event that happened in the past as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and it can also be our reaction. Like, for example, if we don't want to hear from our Divine Mother, like subconsciously, then in that way it could feel toxic, but from our side. So there's a lot of different things that it could be. It could be trauma, it could be some resistance, like something we don't want to hear or see. Uh, yeah, but if we meditate on it, then we should be able to identify what it is. Hmm. Okay. Any more questions or comments before we go into the meditation? All right. So we can get started then. We'll turn off our cameras. Getting comfortable in our seat. Taking any last movements. Once we are in our position for meditation, beginning to relax further, letting the shoulders drop down, noticing if there's any tension here. Taking some deep breaths. Now breathing through the nostrils, noticing the breath in its natural rhythm as it travels in and out of the nostrils. With our attention in our heart, we connect to the being, my higher aspect, my God, my Father, that which I truly am. I contact you. I channel you. I am one with my higher energies, with Source. I feel your presence reverberating within every cell. I turn my attention and intention, my heart and my soul, towards you, that your light, which is my light, would shine forth both inside and outside of me. Now beginning to radiate compassionate love in the heart, directed inwards towards ourself, holding the intention. I forgive myself for my past, for doing the best I could with what I knew at the time. I forgive all those that I have hurt and who have hurt me. Forgive myself for being involved in all past karma. I accept these situations. I accept this history. I surrender and I release it. Naturally, a calm, abiding love arises within my heart. This love I radiate inwards. May I be happy, blissful, and at peace. And now with this inner healing, I radiate this love outwards. I radiate this love out to the group, to those here in meditation. I feel a warmth in my chest, and it rises upwards. It encompasses my heart, my mind. It expands outward. It encompasses the instinctual center, now the whole body. I rest in this light, this love. I am rebalanced, and I send this love outwards. Wishing, may all beings be happy. May all beings be joyful. May all beings find peace. Maybe there is a very small, subtle smile across my face as I contact this energy of the Holy Spirit, as I channel and radiate it outwards. My heart overflows endlessly with bodhicitta, this divine love. Now sitting in this light, I hold my awareness with the breath. I notice the breath naturally moves in and out all by itself. Maybe there arises a thought or an image. Maybe I hear a nearby noise. And when this phenomena arises, I take a few seconds with my awareness to realize that it has arisen, to understand that my attention has gone towards this arising phenomena, to understand what brought my attention in this direction, whether to this image, this thought, this memory, or this contrived scene or conversation in the mental plane. And having this brief moment of understanding, I return my awareness to the breath. I continue in this way, further relaxing the mind, the emotions, the body, the senses, as I am aware of how mind's attention moves. I am aware of the mind. I am aware of the phenomena that bubble up within the mind. And I am anchored in the breath.
Let us shift the awareness into the heart center. Start with the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. Faster. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Shifting the attention to the third eye, the mantra Aum 3 times. My third eye is open. I see the one true reality. No longer am I blinded by the false personality. I can see the light of consciousness. Ajna is activated. The mantra E 3 times. Mantra Inri 3 times. Mantra Re 3 times. My throat center is open. The mantra Ham 3 times. speak the one true word, I create the subjective reality that surrounds me. No longer do I allow thy word to be confiscated by the false personality. I have perfected right speech. I hear the word in everything and anything that surrounds me. No longer am I servant to the voices in my head. I have perfected the inner ear. Vishuddha is active. Mantram 3 times. The mantram Enre 3 times. The mantram Re 3 times.
Now, with this activation, this meditative state, we begin to exercise the creative imagination, a practice that leads to intuition and inspiration. We begin with the visualization, becoming aware of the physical body and knowing that we are not the physical body. We allow the view to move backwards, out, above the physical body. Now we are above the physical body. We look down. We see the body sitting in its place of meditation. We see the place in which we sit. As we rise higher, we see the room where the body is sitting. We notice the details of the room. We see all the different objects in the room, how it is arranged, the furniture. We hover above this room. We rise a little further to where we can see the whole house. We can see the other rooms of the house. If there is anyone else in the house, we can see this too. The other occupants in the rooms where they are staying. We see the furniture throughout the rest of the house and how it is organized. The power of the creative imagination allows us to actually see all of these spaces. And then we float up further. Now we can see above the house or building where we stay. If it is an apartment, we now see the top of the building. We see the street on either side. If it is a house or a caravan, whatever the structure, we see the roof and we see the surroundings of the neighborhood. We see the pedestrians walking by, and we see the neighboring structures and vegetation. We can see clearly any trees, any neighbors, anyone who is out walking their dog, those traveling by, maybe on a bicycle, maybe cars driving by. And we rise higher to where we can see the expanse of the neighborhood or the city. The little structures are like little dots. Perhaps there is a grid. We can see the town or the city or the neighborhood and its surrounding area. And as we zoom out further, we see the clouds in the sky. We see the outline of the continent where the physical body is residing, and any continent which joins to it. Now we zoom out further. We are out in space. We see the whole planet as a globe covered in masses of land, water, clouds. We move slowly towards the sun, and as we are traveling, we see the other planets in their orbit. We see the solar system. We are still moving backwards. We arrive to the sun. We become submerged within it. Now we are all pure, burning, pure light, both within and without. Here there is no darkness. Here there is just purity. And buried within the sun, we take some moments to connect with and contact these energies. We become imbued with these qualities, these values, this heat, this light. And we begin to move towards the center. We are traveling deeper and deeper into the heart of the sun, just as an awareness point. No body, no identity, just an awareness point, moving into the heart of the sun. We now pause in its very center, being further imbued with these qualities, these values. And we find we are beginning to pierce into another dimension, another location. And we find that we are arriving back within our own heart center, this burning, blazing sun, full of light. We take some moments within the heart. We allow this light to spread throughout our vessels throughout our different bodies. We sublimate these higher values within the heart, these virtues. We allow these energies to settle. This fire, this heat, this light spreads throughout the body. It travels up to the throat chakra, to the third eye. It provides further activation, light and energy in these energy centers. Now the whole body is full of light. We seal these energies however we wish to seal them, whether we make an internal affirmation, or we use a rune, or the Gnostic cross. Sealing all of the work of this practice, expressing gratitude for the being, for those with whom we have meditated together, who have shared their light and contributed to this egregore that is nourishing all of us. We express gratitude to all the other beings that are incarnated, those who have both mundane and profound experiences, those who keep the construct running, who balance the energies, those in the higher and lower dimensions. And slowly, with this gratitude, with this divine love, this calm abiding, this state of alert perception and equanimity, we return to the physical body. We wiggle the fingers, the toes. Maybe we move the neck. And we come back into the room and complete the practice. Okay, so hope everyone enjoyed the meditation. This is something you can continue to do to train your creative imagination, your third eye. Practice some traveling through time and space and finding the interconnectedness of it all.
We also activated the throat chakra. If anyone is better with clairaudience, we could also find inspiration through sound and other things of that nature.
Like, what are they called? Sound forks? They called tuning forks? I think Audrey has a set. You said before.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we are nearly to the end of the major arcana. This is exciting. Today we're doing cards 19 and 20. So we're starting with card number 19, the inspiration. This is a quote from Alchemy and Kabbalah and the Tarot. When the mind does not search anymore, when the mind does not search for refuge, when the mind does not go around coveting more books or knowledge, when the mind ignores the memories of desire, then only that which is called love will remain within us. How great it is to love. Only the great souls can know how to love. This is very synchronistic with the chapter that we were reading in the previous meeting, that love is not what the ego thinks it is, and it's not lust or desire. It's not even what the average human thinks it is. And it's very hard to describe when we're full of filters and ego, because any words we can give it will just again be taken by the ego and seen through those filters. And this inspiration that comes from the Holy Spirit and is something that it can represent a certain stage of the path, but it can also be something that we contact any time in the path. And our ability to contact it is in direct proportion to our ability to let go of the mind of clinging, of grasping and craving. And that includes for spiritual experiences, for desires. And if we're really working on that craving, it can become a kind of a paradox, because we can make another goal. My goal is to not crave spiritual experiences, and I really want that. And so we can catch ourselves in this loop where we can feel that it's very hard to get out of, and we can be praying, help me to astral project, please, my being, you know I need this. And it's still more desire, and maybe we are met with silence in this experience, or maybe we have a dream, and the being can even show us something like, in your dream it's your birthday and you receive a whole bunch of gifts, and then the being says, but these gifts you can't open yet, you can't open them until Christmas time, which is 2 + 5 is 7, which is when you triumph, meaning you still have some way to go, but you will receive these gifts as you begin to let go of this covetousness, this craving. And the inspiration arrives as a flash of knowing, of perception, of freedom. It's really something that's very difficult to describe, but when you are inspired, then you know that you're inspired. And working with the creative imagination like we did today is one of the steps that the Master Samael Aumbeor gives as a way to start moving in this direction, to start letting go of the chatter of the mind. We work with visualizing, we're working with the subtler layers of reality. So let's look at the symbols here in this card. At the bottom we have the flowers, and I think we've talked about flowers many times. So the 3 is the 3 primary forces, which means creation, we're creating, and the flowers are the virtues of the soul. So as we move along the journey, we move along this pathway, we come to Arcanum 19, and at this point we have incarnated virtues within the soul. That was the practice we did at the end. We were sublimating the energies, we were calling in these virtues, and they're not something that we mechanically try to recreate with the intellect, like I need to be more kind, be more sweet, and tell ourselves that in our mind. It's something that blossoms naturally, just like how a flower blossoms. It's something organic. When we try to falsify it with the mind, then it becomes something inauthentic, and that is not a virtue of the soul. It's just more grasping, more clinging, more of the ego trying to have a kind of achievement. We see here these initiates. The master says that they are children, even though the artwork doesn't look like they are children, but it's supposed to be a representation of the essence in a unified manner. On one hand, we could say it's like an alchemical couple. They are in a cooperation, working with the alchemy. That's why they have the Tau cross that unites them. They're working to balance the forces of the positive and negative. And on the other hand, we could say it's the soul itself, the essence being born internally in its balance. The male and female aspects are balanced. If it's a child, it's a reference to the essence. And the stage of the path that this relates to, we can see in the sun. The sun has 7 rays. The 7 rays are coming down, and they have hands reaching out. That's like a symbol of divinity reaching for us. The image where the soul of man reaches out for God with his very, very lazy hand, and he's lying back, and God is stretching and reaching out for him. These hands make us think of this. We think we're working so hard, but the divinity, the higher energies are working even harder to reach us down here in this darkness. And when we raise the serpents of fire and the serpents of light, that is these 7 rays that come from the sun. But before we reach that stage of the path, it's also that flash of inspiration. When we contact the sun, we contact this light, this virtue, even if we experience it for just a small moment. In that moment, we have knowing, and we have a great kind of bliss in the superior emotional center. It's something that is not for the intellect or the lower emotions. It's a kind of transcendence. And if we're not in alchemy, then this is something we experience in its level when we work with transmutation, and not just transmuting the sexual energy, but transmuting all of our experiences, because remember, the path is our life, right? So anything that we experience, whether we have some moment of anger or perceived conflict, because real conflict doesn't exist, it's all an illusory perception where we think that we're having some disagreement because of our own subjectivity. Even in these moments, we can transmute all of these experiences, and the wisdom that we gain from it is that inspiration. When we have a view that is outside of duality, that is inspiration. And then finally, with the garments that these initiates are wearing, of course they're wearing white for purity, so they've reached a stage of purity inside of the mind and heart. And the green is, it can be viewed as a reference from Islam, where in Islam green is a special color, and it represents the flowering of the soul. They say in that tradition or mythology that green is Muhammad's favorite color. So Muhammad is also a symbol for the soul, and so this soul is really blossoming at this stage. The wisdom is coming out of all of these experiences.
Yeah. I think when we look at the word inspiration, we can sort of, a synonym for it may be something like, a download or samadhi. It's that flash, that moment where we see objectively. I mean, maybe a download or samadhi lasts longer. Inspiration really can just be like a flick of a second, not necessarily a whole visual experience, but it's that connecting to the third force and that objective reality, even if it's for a fraction of a second. And this is done through balance, right? So like on the card, we have the man and the woman working alchemy. They're holding the Ankh, which is a symbol of Venus, which we know is the ray that's related to balance and the causal plane and the creative energy itself. So that's really what this speaks to. Even Kabbalistically, the number, right? We have 19. Well, 1 and 9 are 10, and then 10 is also 1. 1 is the magician, 1 is the spirit, the All-Father, and 10 is, the wheel, the matrix, the divine mother, right? The reflection of that, right? So even those two things must be in balance, our connection to the Father and the Mother, the wheel, to also see objectively. Actually, since it's 2026, the funny thing is that right now, Kabbalistically,
There's a slide for that at the end.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was going to say this year is actually the same thing. So 2026 reduces down to 10 and 1, but also it's the 64th year of the age of Aquarius, which also reduces down to 10 and to 1. So if there's a slide later about it, I won't jump the gun. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's really, I think it's really important, especially with this card leading into the next card that we have coming up, which is 20. 20 is resurrection. I think that it really points to that first, before we can have a resurrection, before we can, become immortal, before all of that, the step before that is to awaken. We have to have the awakening. We have to have inspiration. We need to connect to the energy before we can even do the work to do the resurrection. Once we have the inspiration, which is connected to that awakening, then we can do the work that that is entailed on Arcanum 20, which is to resurrect the spirit and shed the illusion. So in that sense, it's pretty straightforward in this order. As far as for readings, both of these cards I believe are positive. Inspiration obviously is a good reading. If you get this, it would be a yes in a practical sense, as would resurrection is obviously a yes as well. Um, but yeah, I think that's the most important thing to focus on with when we get this internally, and we look out for that connection and that balance to the creative force itself. Perhaps maybe it's pointing us to pay attention to something that has just happened. If we, allowed the mind to ignore a moment of inspiration, or if we haven't had one, maybe it's to look out for something coming soon. So perhaps we have this number, we should expect to have some type of experience that has some information or a lesson or a comprehension coming soon after that internally. Um, but that's the meaning of the arcanum.
Hmm. Okay, so now we have, oh, let me just get this. I've got something blocking the screen. Okay, now we have another quote, also from the same book, and this is regarding the transmutation aspect and the ego. So Samuel Ambior says, we need to transmute and thereafter sublimate the sexual energy to the heart. It is impossible to advance in the great work without the force of love. The psychological I does not know how to love because the psychological I is desire. Love forgives everything, gives everything. It does not demand anything. It does not ask for anything. It only wants the best for the one it loves, and that is all. The true sentiment of love is perfect, and Satan knows nothing of perfection because Satan is desire. So there's quite a few important things in this quote. Again, it ties to what we were talking about before, that if it's anything from the ego that is not love, and the ego can't know how to love, when we're meditating on the ego, a lot of what we find is that the ego makes certain rules, certain imaginary restrictions in order for the program to function. If A, then B. If someone does this, that means they're a good person, or they're nice to me, or I like them. And then it watches for those parameters, and the first thing is the rule is made up, right? Then when the rule is satisfied, then it says yes or no. If the rule is satisfied, okay, you're a good person, you're good to me, and then my self-love is satisfied. If you didn't do the thing that I asked for, that I made up as a rule, then you're bad. And so it has a very, very limited, false view of the world, very simplistic and erroneous and self-centered. And when we are caught in all of these kinds of programs, then we go around angry, bitter, unhappy, and we have no idea what love is. So in order for us to start to perceive what love is, we need to be prepared to surrender. And that surrender our pride, our desire, our anger. And this is very easy to say, but when you're angry at someone, or when you want to prove your point or your opinion or your criticism of someone, you feel very justified and very correct. And that's the feeling that the ego gives you, only to repeat it again and again. So that's what we have to sacrifice. That's what we have to let go of. And little by little, as we let go of it, then love is spontaneous. It is natural when we realize that we are not separate from the others. And then the next part that's very important here, which we mentioned quite a few times, is in the beginning of this quote, the need to sublimate the energies that are transmuted. Sometimes people write to us and say, oh, I'm working with transmutation, but I'm feeling like I'm going to explode. I don't know, like the energy is going to escape out of my eyes. Some people start crying if they have too much energy, tears just start coming out, or they even feel like the energy goes out in a sensation through the organs because they can't contain it. And one of the reasons this can happen is that obviously there's other factors, but one reason is that it's not being sublimated, so they're getting fuller and fuller and fuller of this energy, but they're not doing anything with it. If we want to complete the transmutation process, we have to sublimate it. So that's where we settle the energy in our heart. We have a part of the meditation where we have a kind of inspiration, a kind of love and compassion for all beings, and we deposit these values in the heart. And it's the same if we go and do exercise or do painting or singing or some kind of creation. We allow this energy to have a kind of expression that is positive so that we don't explode because we've saved up so much of it. So that step is very important. We want to sublimate as much as we can in the heart, and we can also have other kinds of positive expressions for it.
Yeah, this is kind of synchronistic also to, I think we had a question come up in the group right before this about, like, I guess, conditional love or unconditional love in that sense. Makes you think of the, was it the 7 love languages or whatever? And they're basically 5, I don't know. Anyway, and they're like definitely ego. Like that's a perfect example of what the ego perceives love to be, which are just like different forms of attachment, and how based on our preference for attachment, then we mistake that to be love, because true love is unconditional. It is the creative energy itself, recapitulated down into our reality and how we perceive that, and it is an energy, right? So there's no condition to feeling an energy. If you can feel it, you can feel it. And also, all of us are made of that one energy. So if we're connected to it, then we also feel unity and other things of that nature. And there's no condition on feeling unified with everyone else if you actually comprehend and feel that feeling. But it's definitely, the ego is the one that works through attachment, and it likes to try to attribute aspects to things, and many things actually that it does not understand. So it tries to explain it because the lower intellect can't experience these things, but the words are there. They're in the scriptures. They're in society. So the ego is always trying to make these false descriptions of things that have to do with love, right? Because to a certain extent we say the same thing about the virtues. The virtues are love organized by 7, right? So compassion, humility, philanthropy, all of these things, right? Those are just different perspectives of unconditional love. So if we don't understand what love is, then how can we understand, say, what humility is, or compassion, or philanthropy, or all of these things, and it just comes down and down. It doesn't matter how we organize it. Anything that requires unconditional love for it to be, then the ego has no clue on what it is. So we have all of these things in colloquially in society that, like, this is what this is supposed to look like. This is what compassion looks like. This is what humility looks like. But it's really incorrect, because it usually almost always only looks towards the positive perception of what the virtue should look like, and doesn't account for the inverse aspect of the ego, because the ego likes to look at the good side of things and pretend like the negative isn't there. But it just usually it involves being, I would say, too nice, in enabling the ego. The ego thinks that love is allowing the ego to do what it wants and never being contrary to it. So, compassion means letting someone do whatever they want. Humility is never setting boundaries and just allowing people to walk over you. Being meek, weak. This is what the ego perceives these type of things to be, which is, just basically the inverse of the ego. So pride thinks that humility is inverse pride. anger, things like compassion is inverse anger, et cetera, et cetera, right? Greed sees its virtue as being frugal and cheap.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which is funny because when Samuel Ampère describes hell in his book on hell, he talks about misers being very,
Exactly.
very deep down in hell. And it was because they were too frugal and miserly. They're still imbalanced energetically. It's not a punishment, it's just where your energy is hooked to. So it's very interesting that we can, when we are in the ego, make all kinds of judgments and accusations and be very, very off from the truth, which is why we say, well, we don't perceive objectively. So, an example is, let's say that someone is repeatedly being verbally abusive in a family gathering, and one day someone stands up to them and says, Susie, you need to leave. We can't have you here anymore because you're being disruptive and you're attacking all these people. And then someone might say, oh, no, if you're a true Gnostic, you have to allow Susie to just attack everyone in the group, and you need to be quiet and be passive. And of course, that's just another concept, another rule that doesn't take into account the situation. At some point, if someone is abusing certain people, then we get karma for not standing up, for not representing the truth and upholding justice in those situations. And it's going to look different in every situation.
Or it could be like, I starve myself and I don't take care of myself because I don't want to overconsume. I'm not gluttonous. It's not exactly it either, right? Yeah.
Yes, Jorge put a comment. It's easy to get into a trap of thinking you're building or exhibiting virtues when at best it may be a good I masquerading as one.
Yes,
That's right.
absolutely.
Yes, especially if we think we are, say, learning to be silent, but we are staying silent in the face of tyranny, for example. Someone is doing something wrong or misleading people, and we think, oh, if I speak up, then they'll say I'm a pot stirrer, they'll say I'm proud or confrontational. But that's just more ego that cares about its image. If we didn't care about our image, then we would be free to speak up for what is right and not worry about being criticized or falsely accused. It's the ego that likes to accuse people, to make them do what it wants. And that's how the ego works. The ego says, if I'm mad at you, you're wrong because you made me angry. So you're in your ego. And it's only the ego that says that. And it's a classic tactic, right? Whether it's gaslighting or accusing someone, blaming someone for its own feelings. It's all very typical. And we need to be able to identify these things, that the ego sees everything backwards. And if it's the view of the Gen Pop, it's probably not that, because generally we are all 97% ego. So when there's a big group and a big consensus, then it's highly likely that the group is wrong, because most of us are not in a perfect state of being one with our being and being disidentified. So if we get together and say, yeah, I think it's ABC, it's probably wrong. So the process to understand all circumstances is this gradual process that we go through.
Well, even when we are have a decent connection, do we listen to our being? Right, we're still more like of a machine than a person. All that means is that you've tuned your antenna to receive some information, and then you learn how to actually like hear. But the rest of the time, if they're you still have to like find the right frequency constantly, and you're still going through the motions of your personality and things of that nature.
Yeah. So that means this is why it's good advice to not rely on any one person, no matter how advanced they may seem. We always have to go back to our own inner compass. And if we find we're becoming too reliant on someone, some people can say, oh, if this person said this thing, then that's good enough for me. I don't need to reflect on it. I don't need to make up my own mind. I trust them. That can be very dangerous because anyone could be wrong. We could be wrong. They could be wrong. So we have to find that inner master, that inner guide. And next we have a slide on love and marriage in Gnosis, because this card does reference the alchemical partnership. And the original text from Thus Spoke Zarathustra was very, it was in oldish English, and a lot of code or symbolism, and very lengthy. So if you want to go and look it up on child and marriage, you can look up this passage. But this is a summary that I made to make it easier for us, because a lot of people ask about this, and we did a podcast on finding love or finding your partner in the spiritual community, and we talk about this a lot because it keeps coming up. But in reference to this card, it's for anyone who is already married or with a partner, then we are looking to gain the lessons that we need to go through in that relationship, but we're not necessarily looking to run away from our karma, right? It's our karma, and we need to go through it and learn those lessons. But for those who are single and they're in Gnosis, they're in a very unique position in that they can look to find someone else who is not just in Gnosis, but who is aligned in all aspects. Of course, we don't want to fall into perfectionism as well, because who are we? We are not perfect. So if we say, oh, my partner should be a deva who is just completely perfect, and oh, Divine Mother, I read about the initiates who worked with devas. Please send me a deva, and then it will really help my ascension process. It's probably not going to happen. But there are some things that we can keep in our mind and heart that can help us to navigate this part of the path. So one of the first things mentioned in this passage is that when we say, I'm ready, we had a student a while ago say, a very, very new in Gnosis, and they said, I'm ready, I'm sure I'm ready, my being is telling me it's time, and I just met this person, and I'm sure of it. And it all happened very fast. I'm not sure what's happening with them now, but Jorge says I must be able to talk to elementals. Yes, this is on my wish list, because then they can get all the messages from the elementals for me. So before we say, I'm ready, it's time, like people say, we need to understand where that intention is arising from, because that's Gnosis, right? Every desire, every intention, inclination that arises, we need to understand its source. Is it from my being, or is it from another program, another filter? And here it says very clearly, it can come from inner mastery, that awareness that now is the time. Without attachment, I am aware that now is the time for this stage. Or from desire, fear, loneliness. So it's important for us to make that distinction. The reason is because the universe is mathematical. What we put out is what comes back. So if we build a partnership based on loneliness, then we're going to reap the result of that equation, which means that maybe in the relationship we'll end up feeling lonely because that was the value we put out. Again, for fear, maybe in the relationship we'll end up being afraid that they're going to leave us. If it's desire, then the relationship could end up feeling hollow once the desire is satisfied, and so on. So whatever math goes out, that's the math that comes back. And if we go out from a place of balance, then who comes back to us is also in a place of balance. And again, that's highlighted in this passage is that we are not looking to make a kind of agreement, like some kind of, it says contract here, it's the word that I'm looking for, to use someone, or there's another word, I'm not sure, but we're not looking to make it a kind of arrangement, a kind of, convenience was the word I was looking for. It's not meant to be just because, oh, you will do, this is good enough. I don't really mind. Of course, you know, there's all these things are very subtle because we don't mind in the way of we are detached. But it doesn't mean we are reckless and careless with this incarnation that, oh, I'll work with you in this lifetime and you in another lifetime, and not really have discernment with who we choose. So all these things need balance. And if we're going to choose in a balanced way, then we need to be balanced inside. So our mind, our sentiment, our impulses, they all have to be in an equilibrium so that we don't take rash actions. And the other thing is that whatever stage we are at in our spiritual development, in our level of being, that will be what will draw to us. So if we're very unconscious, we're full of ego, then the person that we draw to us, if we say, now I'm going to go out and find my alchemical partner, then they're going to be of the same level of being. And that's a kind of torture, because the greater the ego, the greater the conflict, the challenge, and the disharmony at home. So the more work that we do on our own, the more prepared we will be to attract someone of that level. The higher the level of being that we are, the higher the level of being that we will attract. It's simple magnetism, it's energy, right? So the other part to this is the work with the sexual energy itself. Because when we are single, maybe we came into these studies when we were single or coming out of a relationship. So we understand the importance of not losing the energy or avoiding the orgasm and working to transmute the energy. But maybe we've never done it before, right? And if we think, oh, I'm ready to try it, what we don't realize is that we have many lifetimes of sending the energy downwards. So our natural flow is for the energy to go down, which is what creates that externalization, that looking at everything outside of us instead of going within. So that energetic flow that's entrained in us, when we go into a union and we are trying to have an alchemical cooperation, we may find that it's difficult to control the energy. It's difficult to avoid the orgasm. And maybe we'll say, oh, but, you know, a lot of women say this, before I never had an orgasm anyway, because, you know, that's how it goes with, you know, men and differences between men and women. But what a lot of women find is as soon as they try to work with the energy and to control it and harness it, suddenly they can't, and suddenly they lose it. So for this reason, the years that we take as a single, whether we're a man or a woman, in training the energy to go upwards, means that when we come into an alchemical relationship, we're going to be very prepared to work with this energy safely, because it's volatile. And no matter what we tell ourselves, oh, I'll be different, I have no lust, whatever we say, once you start working with it in a partnership, after some time you may find, oh, this is a very powerful energy. So all of the years that we have as a single person to be transmuting every day and to be really training that energy so that it naturally flows in the other direction, all of that is it's a gift, and it's a good preparation. Okay. I didn't see if there's any comments.
Hajjan had a comment. She said, this is a great and pertinent topic for me, as I used to always almost boast emphatically that I was 100% child-free. Definitely another form of ego, but now that I'm dating someone seriously again, I'm genuinely reconsidering how I see my future, such as considering motherhood. And I think that's a good example of the pendulum. You know? I do know that for, at least if we're working consciously, that if we're meant to have children, we'll have children, and if we're not, we're not. You know, so in the sense of it's already sort of decided. If we push through with ego and do it forcibly and try to work against like the plan for us, we could have a child, but then it can be very karmic usually and not work out very well. Like, for example, I think off the top of my head, this is a story from New Age, but it was QHHT, but there was this woman who had a really hard time having children, and
She tried really
she was
hard.
trying really, really hard, and like in vitro and all these things, and then I think eventually like had a baby, but the baby was stillborn, and then she went to like a QHHT, and basically when they connected to the higher self through the hypnosis therapy, basically it was like, well, this woman's a starseed and she has a specific mission, and she's not supposed to have children because children are karma, and it was the universe trying to tell her, and stop trying. You're not
Because
supposed to.
the plan wasn't for her to come back to this planet
Yeah,
afterwards,
yeah,
but if
yeah.
you have a child, then you may have to come back to settle that karma.
So I mean, that is relative. You know what I mean. But anyway, so if we try to force through things, you know, if it does work out, it can work out in a way that's more negative. I do know. I think like Gene, for example, was about to have his
Second
second
baby,
child. Yeah,
yeah.
he already knew he was going to have two kids in advance because he meditated on it. So it wasn't a surprise that was coming forward. He didn't have to try or do any of these things because it just came along as how it was meant to be. And even though he's working in alchemy and all of those things, so in that sense, when we have these questions, instead of egoically trying to be like, oh, I do or I don't want, because who does or does not want? It's our ego. It's a lot better to take these things internally and ask of our being. Like, well, am I meant to have children? Am I not? And then accept the answer that we get, and then also there won't be that aversion or desire chasing after it or being sad that it didn't happen, because we already know through the intuitive connection what's to come, and then there's no reason, and we accept it, so there's no reason to feel one way or the other in a certain way.
Yeah, it's a great freedom to be working with alchemy, especially if your partner is on board. Because I can see how that could happen if they're a man and they're not practicing alchemy. Then if you don't use contraception, then it will be very easy to have a karmic child. But if they want to practice alchemy with you, and they're avoiding the orgasm or spilling the energy, then if you do have a child, you'll know that that was something that was planned by the being, and it's like a dharmic kind of relationship between the souls. Whereas when it's karmic, many things can be quite heavy, quite difficult, like, of course, who's immune to rebellious children, but but many a parent of teenage children has moaned and complained about the difficulties of that, and all kinds of things can happen, and it's not to be attached either way, but it's definitely very different if it's planned for us, and we surrender to our higher self in that plan, then it can be something beautiful. There's definitely lots of children of couples in Gnosis, and there's equally lots of couples that don't have children and don't mind as well.
Yeah. Also, I mean, to an extent, it's all planned anyway, right? So even if we did something through ego, the being allowed us to do something through ego, especially if it's like, say, before we came to the teachings, right? It wasn't an accident that we were in the situations that we were in. It's all relative. That's why we say that these things are relative. But if we are working with the tools, that we're already working with the practices, something we can do is to go into meditation and ask about it, because that could ease the egos that are going this way and that way, right? Because we have the capability to then go into, meditation and try to commune with our higher self, rather than a regular person. But it's probably not, like I said, it's not really an accident either if a regular person has a child without knowing they were supposed to have one. But, you know.
Yeah, so we're not saying anything either way. It's all something to reflect on and meditate on and see what happens. Okay, so I put a breakdown here because for anyone who gets dizzy or turned around by salt, mercury, and sulfur, these are not all things that go on the table with your food. So it can be easy to get mixed up when he keeps saying the different definitions. So I've put them here so it can be very clear, and we'll make sure this is included in the handout as well. Because when you study this, you can go, oh yes, okay, I know what they mean, and then you go away and you just be like, what is Mercury again? Like, which one is it? It's just so confusing. So,
Please don't eat mercury.
yes, we're not saying to eat Mercury. Okay, so there's the story of Parsifal that's connected to this work because we're talking about the alchemy, and the woman you see in the picture is Kundry, and she is the temptress that is also later connected to his success. So when we work with this energy, we can have failure or we can have success, and it's on us, the soul, the being in the middle, that chooses between the forces to decide if we will be successful or not. And the elements that we work with, we have salt, which is the actual semen itself. And of course, we've all been studying for some time, so we understand that semen is not just something that a man has, but it's a kind of fluid, we could say, that both the man and the woman have. And the mercury is the energy. So if we imagine a circle, this is the mercury, and then inside it is the salt, which is the physical matter. And they're like a two-in-one shampoo, but they have different parts. And then the sulfur is the fire itself, that heat. So we need the combination of all these things. And someone might say, this is very technical and maybe boring or annoying. I don't want to know this. Why do I need to know this? There's a reason why. The first reason is that in many Taoist tantric traditions, which of course a lot of students in Gnosis may read or come across, study, there is a confusion about how to work with this energy, because this is the reason why the Taoist books on Tantra are not generally recommended by a Gnostic instructor, because they confuse this matter about how to work with the energy. They teach a kind of spilling. Now, if you know how to read it and you're not going to be confused and start spilling accidentally because of what they say, then sure, read it. But you have to understand what it is you're reading so you don't get mixed up.
Yeah, I think they use a terminology for the connecting to creative energy internally as a valley orgasm, and obviously we want to avoid the orgasm, but it's really just a terminology because they're not saying to have an orgasm. They're just calling the connection to that ecstasy, that energy that comes from above, because it does feel pleasant. They're saying that it's like having an orgasm internally without having an orgasm. But some people will take it to understand it in the sense of having an orgasm without spilling physical matter, which you could also do, and that's a tenet of a lot of Black Tantra schools. So where they are experiencing the spasm and losing the energy, but just not losing any physical matter, which is actually, I think, more worse than spilling, because I believe some of the black techniques involve either actually spilling the physical fluid and reabsorbing it. So if you don't even spill the physical fluid, you don't have to reabsorb it. It's like doing that step. It's like getting better at doing that, which all of that sounds a little bit gross too. But yeah, in that aspect, people will confuse that with that because it has the word orgasm, but it's just a terminology thing. So
And there's the original Taoist books, and then there's everything that came after that where people are writing about that. So then it's like Chinese telephone. Then they say, oh, very clearly, you should have the orgasm, but don't spill any physical matter. So they're saying you need to protect the mercury, but spill the salt. And what we teach in the right-handed path is we need all three of these if we want the Kundalini to go up. And that's why you have the Kunda buffer and all these other people saying either, oh, it's good, or it's bad, beware, you're going to go crazy. Because if you awaken with your ego, you're feeding all this energy to the ego.
There's also exoteric Tao, which isn't even about working with the energy, and it's more for just vitality. And I believe in that it's like it's for the man not to spill, but the woman too also, which can be confusing. But in that sense, they're not working with the energy or trying to absorb an energy. I think I've read a book like that where they even talked about like this is for people who don't know how to transmute. They even use the word transmute. They're like, if you knew how to transmute the energy, to this, but this for helping you, stay
Be
healthy,
healthy.
healthy. But someone who knows how to transmute doesn't have to do this because it's superior or something like a master who can transmute. So.
Yeah, so that's the first reason, is that we don't want to do that, to spill the salt but not the mercury. And then the second reason is the sulfur, the fire is required. And this is a difficult step because sometimes when we learn that we want to save the energy, then we can become afraid to feel the fire, because we think that if I feel the fire, I'm one step away from losing the energy. But we have to have some fire, otherwise we don't have all of these three elements to do the creation. So that's why you'll see in a lot of the original alchemical works, they would say apply a gentle heat. But then also you would see, for once you're more advanced, it would say just before boiling point. You want the maximum temperature just before boiling point. So all of these are references to different stages as we learn to work in the alchemy. The gentle heat is so that we can practice safely, and often they say in the beginning the couple should have a very short practice and do that daily, and then over time they get more experienced. But eventually we do want more fire, but we don't want too much fire, because then there's a danger. So we have to find that fine line, that point where it's safe but we have fire, and that's how we get these elements. And if we want to get more technical, because it is a science, it creates a kind of vapor that rises and accumulates. And unless we get to this certain stage where we have the right amount of heat, the right amount of salt and mercury, which is kind of subjectively why they talk about diet, because they want you to be healthy, to have the elements to make these things, then we have to be healthy, and then we have to create these conditions, and then this vapor is going to rise and it's going to accumulate little by little. And as this vapor rises, the Ida and Pingala need to be completely balanced. When Master Lakshmi talks about the alchemy, he says that if there's a blockage in either one, then the number of, you could say, vaporous atoms or these things that come up, you're going to have an excess on one side. And in his description, he says that the excess goes to the ego. Now, whether we could say that's subjective or it's one way of looking at it, the thing that we can understand universally from that is that when we work with the energy, we need balance. And it's the combination of all of these factors that is going to allow us to move along with this science. Is there another comment besides don't eat mercury? No, it's just that. Okay. All right, so now we have a final quote on 19 before we move to 20. This is from Master Lakshmi. And again, see, all the books, all the masters, they're all saying the same thing about inspiration. He says, in this work, we need to integrate with the seventh commandment of our Divine Mother, Kundalini. Let there be love, so that the work of this man and this woman becomes fruitful. So whenever we're feeling tension and desire, we know that's the ego. And the absence of that will be the presence of this divine love. Okay, so now we're on card 20. This is the resurrection. I think you said a funny comment today. None of us has experience in this lifetime of being resurrected. So we couldn't tell you what that feels like because we were not resurrected yet. And there are some resurrected masters we've heard about that are showing their face. Like they said, Samuel Enveyor has been seen, he's been spotted in Italy, but we haven't been able to track them down. They're here and there. But this card still has a meaning for us. So we'll start with this quote. Samuel Enveyor says in Tarot and Kabbalah, there are two types of covetousness, for money and for psychic powers. Covetousness for money exists when we long for it, for psychological purposes and not in order to acceptably take care of our physical necessities. It is necessary to discover where necessity ends and where covetousness begins. There is covetousness for psychic powers when we only want end results, accumulating theories and searching for powers from school to school. The mind, bottled up within covetousness, is unstable and incapable of comprehending the things that are stable, permanent, and divine. So this card 20 obviously represents the resurrection. The symbols here are pretty self-explanatory, right? We have the mummy, which is a symbol of death, the death of the ego, and then we have the soul who is rising up, and he has a staff of power. He has an axe representing balance of the forces. He has the wings, which means this liberation. The soul is free. He's a hawk with a human head, so it's a full integration, and he's escaped from the body, from the things that trap him down below. And the mummy is resting on one pillar. So we talked about the pillars of the temple. We have the black and white, we have Joaquin Boaz, but now there's just one pillar, meaning that all of the black has been purified. So we've reached this stage where we are in true liberation, we are in true purity, we are in true balance. There's no more duality, there's no black and white, there's no more black, there's just one white pillar, and it's in the bottom of the card representing foundation or yesod, the completion of the work up to this stage. The ego has died and now the soul is free. And if you zoom way in, if you just go close to your screen, you can see on this hawk man, on his head, there's a little symbol that looks like a white dome with another little white bit in it. And that thing is also on the head of the mummy. And this is a representation to symbolize illumination or the full activation of the pineal gland at this stage. So this is a certain stage of development. We are illuminated, we are able to fully perceive correctly in a certain level, and we have visions, we have these powers, we have these capabilities. And as we go along this path, we might have them to some degree, right? Like when you close your eyes and you meditate, maybe you see a scene. That's the beginning of clairvoyance. Even if you imagine something, if you can see what you imagine, that's the beginning of clairvoyance. But at some stage, one pitfall for people is that they get hungry, the ego gets hungry to advance. And if we have this kind of greed, that is going to prevent us from ever reaching this stage of illumination. This stage of illumination is a complete freedom. It's a resurrection. So everything that we had before, the desires, the ego, that's dead, and we've been born again as something new and free that doesn't have attachment. And of course this can happen in stages, and then there's the big stage along the path. But greed is going to be a big stumbling block for us that can keep us stuck for years or forever until we're ready to give up this greed. So the Master talks about the balance between what we need and what is greed. And whether we apply it to money or to psychic powers, the supposed need is very easily blown out of proportion by the ego. It's like I joked earlier, the ego will pray, please give me astral projection, I need it so much. You don't know what I could do with that. If I just have astral projection, oh, I will get so many messages, I will give so much sacrifice, oh my being, you know I need it, I need it. And of course it's just the ego that is full of desire, and the more we are in that energy, the more we will not have these things, because these things are given by the being at the being's discretion for his path, and the being is what we really are. So it's us doing it to ourselves. It's like our higher aspect is managing our more wayward aspect, you could say. So again, the solution is the same. We need to come into a place of balance, into a place of psychological freedom, complete freedom from desire. And that's where we begin to experience these wings, this freedom from ego, from its trap, its illusion.
Yeah. We talked a little bit on how the two cards are related with inspiration and resurrection. Kabbalistically, 20 is two, so it's a high priestess, which is two is also it's the cosmic egg, right, that we descend down into to resurrect. It's two times 10. 10 is the cosmic egg as well. You know what I mean? So it's that dual aspect of 10. But in the sense, right, we have like Mars, which is the masculine, and then Capricorn. These are the two things as we come to come out of that egg, to resurrect out of that egg. We have to balance the feminine with the masculine force, and we have to work on the death. Capricorn being inherently related to that. Um, from that point, I think the one important thing that I think the master really talks about also as well in this chapter in Tarot and Kabbalah specifically, I believe Master Samael talks about the three stages of resurrection and the three types of resurrection. And this also kind of comes back to the last arcanum that we looked at, in the sense that the first resurrection is a spiritual resurrection. For Master Samael, he subjectively said this comes at the end of the first mountain. But in a sense, we could say it's the awakening or that first stroke of inspiration as well. And that's to have the spirit connect to the unity. Before, we have to die inside the disidentification is what we're saying. So we haven't done the work yet, but we've connected to the unity, to objective reality, and we've connected to our spirit, not our soul, but the spirit, right? Then the next stage of resurrection is something that we might be familiar with if anyone who's like looked into like Hindu Mahatmas, things of that nature, the super high level beings that, you know, apparently can like phase in and out of reality, or maybe if you're into extraterrestrials, there's those aliens that they say they can just appear in a physical body and then they leave. But he said there's a process that happens in the spiritual world where we create a body of matter that is of the higher planes, but it has the ability to come in to the physical reality, and that's the second stage of resurrection. And if you ever heard of the stories of like so these masters, like they don't eat or anything, but they have to like do something really quick to keep them still within the reality.
He said, "Quick, bring me." He said to his
Yeah,
disciple, "Quick, bring me some chapatis," because he was about to disappear. He had to eat some food to stay here.
right. And in that sense, so they can with their causal body, because I'm pretty sure that's the causal body. So like they have their soul and they have full control of their soul and they have enough control over their soul that they can enter this reality with the soul. But there's still of the matrix, but it's a superior being that can phase in and out of the physical at will. And then the last stage is, what we all know of with Jesus, right? Which is the full disembodiment of the illusory vehicle. You sacrifice the illusory vehicle, your last attachment to the matrix, and then after 3 days you resurrect with a new physical body that can now, as Master Samael subjectively puts it, travel through hyperspace. But as we know, like Jesus is said to be at race level mastery, where you can now leave the solar system, leave the galaxy, and go to other galaxies. We talk about how I've talked about before how we know other galaxies have different math, but we can't perceive that with the vehicles we have, and that means that we also can't perceive it. Our higher self, the angels, the aliens, they can't perceive what another galaxy looks like. So clearly, there's some vehicle above that once it's created and perfected and whatever that level of mastery, then now you can actually process what it's like to be in a reality that isn't under the same rules as us. So when you create that body, that is the third, I suppose, the third phase of resurrection in that essence. And then you wouldn't need the body that exists here anymore. So I know there are other institutions, for example, they say that there's masters who have achieved resurrection, but you don't need to disincarnate. But Master Samael makes it pretty clear that the third stage, the full resurrection, so if you've gone through all of those things, at the end, if you actually have resurrected, like to leave the construct, you would have to sacrifice the physical body. And it seems to be very clear in this chapter. There are masters apparently who said they've done the three mountains and they're still incarnated in a physical body, but perhaps it's because they've gone through one of the earlier stages of resurrection and they're not they're a lower degree master. To some extent, but they're working on another stage of that process. So that might answer that question in that sense. Um, wait, oh, uh, I just my mind. Hold on, wait a second. There's a point.
You're talking about the stages of the masters,
Stages of the masters.
and that there are masters that haven't resurrected because they're at an earlier stage of development.
Yes, I said that.
And you're talking about being able, the other math of the other universes. So being able to
Right, that as well, but
to create a body that allows you to.
I lost my train of thought. I'll come back
Okay.
to it later. It's fine.
Maybe we'll come back later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here we have a quote from Master Lakshmi as well on resurrection. And again, it's just more of the same thing, more of the disidentification. So he gives another commandment, right? He says, in the resurrection, we must work at cleansing our chalice of all mental filth. So all of those negative thoughts, the chatter, the anger, the criticism, the judgment, all mental filth. We can't have first inspiration and then resurrection if we are still trapped in these traps of the mind. So in order to later fill it with the sacred wine of transubstantiation. In this arcanum, we must integrate with our Divine Mother Kundalini and fulfill her 8th commandment, let there be peace. There can be no second birth, no resurrection where there is no peace. Peace is the expression of the inner fragrance of the spirit. So that freedom, that peace, the ego wants it, but the ego can never have it, because it's only in the absence of the ego that we have true peace.
Okay, before we go into this, I remember where I was getting at. Okay, so basically what I was saying, we're talking about those 3 levels of resurrection, is it comes back to the importance of what we said, that even though we disidentify, even if we've awakened the consciousness to a point where we know everything is an illusion and we know everything is relative, the idea that many in New Age have, that it's just like, oh, everything's an illusion, so I don't have to do anything. But if we look at that trail, that's only the first step, is awakening to that realization that we are here to still do the work with everything else. So we have to create that whatever super high level body, whatever that Jesus created, to actually leave. So it's not enough just knowing. We have to actually go to these other layers of reality and evolve and grow out of this reality. Then we do have to do the work. It's just that the work is relative, so we shouldn't be attached to it. But there is, to that extent, we have to. There's both the masculine, we have to awaken, and that feminine work and create the bodies and all of that. And that's the balance, and that's what we achieve, that full resurrection process.
Okay, so this is the final slide.
Yes. So this comes back to what we were talking about in the Kabbalah for this year. And also, like I said, in a sense, it's also the 64th year of Aquarius. So the math it's double on this. But 2026 adds up to 64, which is 10, and 10 reduces down to 1. And we've been talking about how, I believe it was in 2025, in the first year of 2025, Gene put out a video, if I remember correctly, where he was talking about that the energies are going to start to shift eventually. And soon, because of the direction the planet is moving, if people can't just sit in the middle, eventually they're going to be forced to a side. Like somebody who's ignorant and never gets into esotericism without even knowing it will just start strengthening their ego and forming into their ego. And this is Kabbalistically reflected in this year's number, in the sense that 1 is the All-Father. It is Source, right? Not the being. The being is 4. That's the Emperor. But it's Source itself, the message of the Father. And then, but 10 is samsara and the wheel itself. So there's the energy that's pulling us between this way and this way, depending on if we're awake or not, or we're aligned with the ego. There's, I said this, I believe, on the Telegram, but if we were to look down into the layer of the Logos and the angels, this is reflected in the energies of the fact that, I believe it was in 2020, there is a deal made between the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, where the White Lodge is no longer opposes the Black Lodge when the Black Lodge wants to do something. That's a subjective at a meta level, but that's what it is that the planet's energies are now pulling towards negativity. If we come from a macro sense, and we looked at the Pleiades last week in this class, we see that we're in a period of darkness and we're about to come into a period of light. So subjectively everything that's going on, whether it's the deal between the angels or just our psychology and the collective consciousness, like wars and everybody going crazy. It's all like we said earlier. We're more machine than we are connected to our spirit at this point. Even if we are awakened, we're, these vehicles are like robots. So if we're not staying aware and staying connected to our source of spirit, well then, our bodies are just going to be feeling these energies, and it's not something like magical or mysterious. It's just that there literally is scientifically right now a lower vibration on this planet, and it's going to get lower before it's going to go get really, really high. So that's why it's the end of the root race, and there's a new root race starting. It's why, whatever is going on in the middle triangle. It's why what's going on at all levels of reality, because it's as above, so below. So those are the cosmic energies that we're working with. And if we're not awake, then we'll be under the influence of the Black Lodge, in the sense of with the ego, right? Because everything now, even the systems that were geared towards helping us move away from the ego, are now also under the influence of the ego. So the only way to not be under the influence of the ego is to be connected to our own unique frequency and to be awake. And that's just the vibrations planet, because it's preparing to cleanse itself and move up frequency to where I believe, what are the New Age, some people say it's the fourth dimension, some people say it's the fifth dimension. I do actually think, in Gnosis at least, it's the lower fifth dimension. The next root race would be in the astral. So whatever, not that it matters, but it's moving up into a sense that the next root race, everyone will be of a higher predisposition. They wouldn't be awakened fully, but they would be beings being born with a higher level of consciousness. So we wouldn't see all these systems and things. They have to go. Like they can't exist in that period of light. It wouldn't make sense. So, and in a sense, the cleansing might be even those beings cleansing themselves. In New Age, they talk about anyone who isn't prepared for the frequency shift will just perish from that. Maybe like psychologically, it wouldn't be able to handle it. We know that impressions, right, are the main source of energy for the system, and if we get overloaded with impressions we cannot understand, it might just make the vehicle or the person fail. So, then that would be the abyss, I suppose. Or, they also talk about the split of the two Earths. There'll be a new Earth and an old Earth, but we know that can't, the dimensions are all together with each other. So it might just be, a bunch of people losing their mind while, those who are awakened are actually experiencing positive energies or something along those lines.
You already see a bunch of people losing their mind right now. So.
But anyway, it's all subjective. But the point is that the number on this year, and we know moving forward, this is coming forward on a more macro scale. We know that we entered the transit of Pluto into Aquarius. We know that the 13th Katun is coming up in the Aztec calendar. So there's like more larger things that this energy has already been building this way. But the significance of the duality on this year really seems to be pointing to that this might be where the energy split so much that, over the course of this year, we might have to make decisions, and just decisions in the sense of just, staying aware or losing ourselves to the ego.
We'll notice it, say, if there's a group of people coming together, you might see a split down the middle between the ones that choosing the ego and the ones that are choosing to stay awake in their interactions. And it will be to the ones who can see it, it's very, very clear, because the ones in ego will be vehemently defending the ego, and the ones that are choosing to stay awake are not fighting. So when you can see it, then the ones who are in ego think there's a fight. But and it doesn't mean that the ones who are awake in those interactions are always awake or don't have ego, but it's just very clear to see energetically which way that there's this pull within groups.
Yeah, and it's just important to just be aware of it, to hold our own frequency, right? It doesn't mean like Nibiru is coming like tomorrow. With some discernment, this whole period leading forward towards whenever that happens, because nobody knows when that's going to happen. Specifically, it could be sooner than later. If everybody does great work, it could be pushed off, from my understanding, on things of that nature. But we'll see a split in the psychology on the planet even more. I mean, we've already seen there's been a divide coming over and over again. Even in the regular population, you see how people get split across politics and religion. But it should get more drastic. So in that sense, it's just important to just be aware of it and hold our own frequency. as far as like how the message should be, you know, I've already internally, the feeling is to be a little bit more blunt, um, and stop worrying about, uh, you know, trying to make everyone happy. With some discernment, the majority of people will not understand this, and you know, they've had their chance, and it's not something to judge or be critical of, but we need to be careful because a lot of us are still here, and we need to all support each other in not being pulled to there because everybody's already there. The whole concept of hermeticism and the fact that it harms people to say the truth out in the open, it seems to be more from that's just a system of control in itself as well. Because anybody who's interacted with anyone who's an ego, if you say something they don't like, you don't really hurt their feelings. They'll rationalize it away 5 minutes later and just say that you're wrong anyway in their mind. They play mental gymnastics. So it's like this concept that we're harming people by holding our truth is withholding the
Yeah.
truth, right? But seems to be actually part of a system of hermeticism and silence that's been placed by another system of control to actually keep us under control at a higher level. There doesn't seem to really be. I mean, obviously, we don't want to attack people. We don't want to antagonize people. That brings enemies. You don't want to, judge people because everybody's just doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's nothing wrong with anything else. You know, we need to understand everyone's at their own level, but it is to an extent we need to also be to talk to each other. Like a lot of the times when there's these things, like for example on the open, and I've tried to say this, people are assuming that you're angry or being contrary or you're debating with them, and it's like, well, it's not a debate. To be fair, it's just someone is spreading misinformation. You say the opposite. You don't judge them. You understand where that person's coming from. They're mad at having a debate with you, but when you're speaking, you're not even trying to convince that person, but it's more speaking out to everyone else. So that if anyone who understands what I'm saying, then you can see that there's not just pressure to conform. So it's important to have that voice come out. But like I said, never, not to get wrapped up into it. Don't become a fight because if we lose our own balance, then we also still get dragged down into a lower vibration. So it's a delicate balance, right? So trusting our intuition. Sometimes it's the right time to say something. Sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut because it's like you're starting to get into your ego, and if you feel yourself getting angry or frustrated, then that's usually the time it's best to just leave the conversation, because the conversation in a debate with someone and that is going to go around in a circle forever and ever and ever. So we have to know when to say, when to exit, when things like that. But to an extent, there is a energy to be a little bit more firm and harsh, because those that don't get it just won't, and that's okay, and that's okay. But there's people that do need to hear the things that need to be said. So,
Yeah. So
and also the things can help people at every level anyway. It's someone's choice to have their cup down. The teaching is the same if we're here and haven't even connected to our being, or if you're a master living in another galaxy. The interpretation is only different because your understanding of reality is different. But end of the day, the interpretation is always going to be subjective, no matter how much we know, unless we're at unity permanently. So, staying aware, self-remembering, practicing the three factors, understanding others, and understanding trying to understand their perspectives, because everybody's perspective is valid in its own sense. That's a lesson that people have learned at every level, whether they understand, what da'ath is or not. And there's got to be a boundary set for that. It's like, okay, you don't have to understand what I'm saying, but don't attack, don't attack, and show respect to others if you want people to respect you too, because that's just like a relative thing. But it's funny because there's this demand for respect and things coming from those who are actually probably disrespecting everyone else. So just to make it clear that it's like, it's cool, but this is this way. I don't know. And like I said,
the summary is that it's a time when we are being called to be authentic and to speak the truth that we're receiving from Source, and to come away from feeling like we need to hide our light. There isn't a lot of time left, and it's a big step in the path to be able to hear from Source and then to be in our inner authority, to be speaking from the being. And one of the big parts of that test is group pressure against us, so that we think we need to hide, we need to be weak, we need to worry, what will people think of us? So Jorge says, this is the year to define ourselves. Yes, that's exactly right. That's what we're saying. So to define yourself is to either be with the ego or with the being. And it's the ego who is afraid, who falls into people
Not even with the being,
pleasing
with
and
source.
yeah,
With
well,
I am.
source,
Yeah.
being,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it, to be with that inner authority and to deliver the message that it's your mission to deliver. And the only thing that's going to stop you is going to be fear of people's opinions, fear, am I connected enough? Am I hearing well enough? Am I channeling? The ego denies it. It says it's not my being, it's not source. And we can only pass that by taking the leap of faith and then feeling what that frequency feels like and becoming more and more aligned with it.
Mhm.
So the people that come to attack us, they're there to test us. That's our test. And if we say, oh, I'm going to keep silent, I'm going to go with the group, then maybe the test will come again, or maybe we'll have more and more justifications that will push us to that side. So we're going to go this way or this way, and this is the year. Another interesting thing is the 10 is also the male and female, right? So it represents alchemy. We have all of our soul experiences leading up to this moment, and now is the time to choose. Are we going to repeat the whole cycle again, or are we going to alchemize and take it to the next octave? And that decision lies with us. But we have to recognize this year. It's a big year.
Yeah, I mean, Maharaji is Ram Dass's guru who said, he would always tell Ram Dass to tell the truth in love. And that's the thing. We need to tell our truth. It needs to come from a place of love. So even if we're being firm and we're setting a boundary because someone is, attacking us, we just need to remember that we always have to be coming from a place of love. Compassion is an aspect of love. It's mercy and justice. Sometimes, we do need to be firm, but it should never be out of anger, right? Because the inverse of the ego that covers up compassion is anger. So if we ever find ourselves getting identified with anger or frustration, that's probably when it's best to pull back. But always try to stay in balance and say what's our truth, and it doesn't even mean that your truth is right, or it's all our perspective. And we can learn from trying to understand others' perspectives instead of getting angry or judging them for not agreeing with us. Some of the most profound lessons, I think, that, at least for me, that I've learned have come from people that were overtly incorrect, like just like in ego, may as well have been black magic. But instead of saying like, ew, that's black magic, I'm not going to listen to that. You take into meditation and you just sit and it's like, what would my psychology have to be to actually believe this as truth? And through investigating that, it opens up reality to you even more. And then you don't judge them because then you know where they're coming from, even though objectively it's incorrect. But it doesn't matter. It's just they're identified with this or they're identified with that. And there's no reason to judge somebody if you actually understand what within us they're identified with. And then you still can say something, that can be opposite of what they're saying, but you're not coming from a place of being angry or looking down on them or feeling superior or whatever that is.
Yeah, so happy 2026, everyone. The year to define ourselves. Thank you for your attention, and we hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Yes, 2026 is a big year, so be strong and receive a lot of light, power, and strength. Oh, there's a comment. Audrey says, it's my understanding that the Hermetic seal is also a call to allow gestation of energy before expression and then vocalizing through conscious creation. We can know when it's right speech through that practice. That's right. Yes, the seal is to seal ourselves to our being, to source, and then if it's about to be the ego speaking, you usually get a little kick, like, psh, that's the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you everyone, and you're welcome. Take care. Blessings. We'll see you next time.
Yep.